Our first guest has always impressed us with his insights and his opinions when it comes to BYU football, both with the current roster and with recruiting. You can find his work at 247sports.com, cougarsportsinsider.com, and at Rakoto10 on X, and right here on Wise Guys. Just days from the start of practice, we're happy to welcome back our friend Jeff Hansen. And here he is. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Doing well, guys. How are you doing tonight?
Good. It feels like we were just together, but it's been a long time.
I was thinking about that. It does feel like it was just yesterday, but it was months ago, and we're ready to talk about a new football season already.
It's crazy.
It's cool. And now, look, since we were last together, notably, four-star running back McKay Madson out of Fresno went on NBC and announced he was picking BYU over Oregon to play his football after his church mission. So we start with a two-part question. How significant is Madson for BYU's ground attack in the years ahead? And we've already talked about he's very Luke Staley-esque in his film.
Or he could be a star middle, but he can play wherever he wants, honestly.
And then the second part is how could signing him impact BYU's efforts to land five-star quarterback Ryder Lyons and four-star tight end Brock Harris, two other high-profile LDS kids who, by the way, they're all friends. So those are your two-parters right out of the gate. Let's start with Madson and the significance.
Yeah, I love it. McKay Madson, he really was kind of a late bloomer in terms of recruiting. He went from, I think he was unrated. At the time he got his offer from BYU, I think he had BYU and had just received an offer from UCLA, if I remember right. But really wasn't on the radar, and I don't think he had a star rating with us over at 247 Sports at the time he got that offer. A year later, a year goes by, and he's in the All-American game. He's a four-star recruit everywhere you look. I mean, it's a big deal. He's incredibly athletic. You guys already touched on it. He could play everywhere that he wants. Very, very good player. I know that the coaches like him at running back. I think that McKay would like to play running back. Guys, I think he's an NFL linebacker. I see Miles Jack when I watch McKay Madson play, that he did it on both sides of the ball a little bit for UCLA. He eventually found a home at linebacker and went on to the NFL as a linebacker. I think that McKay Madson has that kind of potential as a linebacker. I think he could be a very, very good, very effective running back for BYU as well. Big-time player. There's no question about it. And then how does this play a role into the future? And here's what's so fun if you're a BYU fan right now. With the guys that BYU is recruiting, four-star teammates, it's kind of a prerequisite. It's sort of something you have to have in order to get into the conversation. Take a guy like Ryder Lyons. He's deciding between Oregon and USC. Ohio State offered the other day. He's got the big dogs of the big dogs coming after him. If you don't have that kind of talent that you're in the mix for, you're not going to be part of the conversation. The fact that BYU is in the conversation and is a really prominent part of that conversation for a guy like Ryder, for a guy like Brock Harris, says that I think nationally these recruits are looking at what BYU's doing, looking at what Kalani is doing, and they have a lot of respect for it. And so BYU's hanging around in these recruiting battles that 4 or 5 years ago they weren't hanging around in. So it's a big deal to continue to land guys like McKay Madson. Is he going to be the reason that Ryder Lyons would come to BYU? No, probably not. But without a guy like McKay Madson and guys like that in the pipeline, then BYU's not a consideration.
I ran into his parents at a baseball team fireside last Sunday in Fresno. McKay was out of town. His parents came, and his dad went to Stanford. His mom went to BYU. They couldn't be happier to be sending their kid to Kalani Sitake. They're so impressed with the coach.
Yeah, they loved it, man. Every time when I would talk with the parents, when I would talk with them, originally, and you mentioned it, his dad's not a BYU guy. When he got to BYU for one of his first visits over the summer, McKay and his dad both kind of made comment to me of like, there's something about this place. This is a little bit different than what we're used to seeing. And BYU just kept lingering around throughout that recruiting process. We had guys on the ground at the Navy All-American game, and going into that week, everybody expected Oregon. I mean, everybody expected Oregon, but that lingering around and that special feeling that Kalani's got that exists at BYU's campus, that ultimately the Madson family couldn't get that out of their minds, and they decided that's where BYU was the place they needed to be.
I liked watching him on the video that he posted the other day, back squatting 400 plus, and I'm not talking about once. Like, he was just repping it out, which is ridiculous. He'd be one of the strongest linebackers on the team right now, so he's a great prospect. I want to ask you about somebody else that I think maybe has an impact. on recruiting, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on his impact next season. Keanu Tanuvasa transferred to BYU from Utah. Of note, he said no thanks to Georgia and Alabama in the process. Maybe that's bigger than the fact that they got him is who he said no to. What does that do to help BYU's interior on the defensive line? And does that help recruiting? Does that have people take note and go, oh, maybe I should consider BYU?
You know, I think more than anything, I'll answer your second question first, Blaine. I think more than anything, what it does is guys that, you know, you look back over the last 10 or 15 years, so many BYU guys ended up at Utah. And if I go back in time, I'm sure there are others that you could point to, but Chase Hansen was the first guy that really comes to mind for me that should have been a BYU guy, and he went to Utah. And after that, there was just this flood of guys that followed him there. Cole Fotheringham, Britton Covey, there was a bunch. Keanu Tanuvasa is a Utah guy. Not only was he at Utah, his dad played at Utah. I mean, he's a Utah guy. And I think what that does is it shows all of these other Utah guys, or maybe some of these guys that are on the fence, that, hey, look, BYU can be for real too. And I know BYU fans, we've all known that. We've all said that. We've all seen it play out over the last couple of years that, look, these two programs are a lot more neck and neck than any Utah fan wants to admit. But we hadn't really seen that trickle down to the recruiting level yet. And I think a guy like Tanuvasa, who was unquestionably going to be a starter for Utah next year, to have a guy like that transfer from Utah to BYU, that's a huge deal when BYU goes heads up against Utah on the recruiting trail. What is he going to do on the field? Man, he's a day one starter. Keanu Tanuvasa is that guy in the middle of the defense. He's the guy that I think when Kalani Sitake took over as the head coach at BYU, it was guys like Keanu Tanuvasa that everybody thought was going to come right away. And it's taken some time to get those guys there. And I think you look at the last couple of classes, you know, Tanuvasa now, Sani Tuala was a guy that Utah wanted a lot. There's been a couple of guys. Vili Pua is another one. You're starting to see it happen, that the guys that went to Utah, the Star Lotulelais, guys like that are now coming to BYU, and Tanuvasa will be the most prominent name, but I think he's the first of what will be a handful of guys that could have gone to either school and ended up making an impact at BYU.
You know, it's interesting. Little practice report. Guys do have a little insider at practice. Right. For this last couple of weeks, he has been popping out and standing out, and coaches are saying, wait, he's better right now than he was during the season last year. Like, he's in better shape. And they said unbelievably strong and explosive, and that they did not realize that his work ethic and his leadership could be the way it is right now. Like, he's leading out in all the drills and working hard, and it's almost like he's determined, like, this is my shot to get to the NFL, to be a Star Lotulelei and that kind of stuff. And he is putting in the work, and he's popping off the field when people are watching him. So that's kind of exciting. I'm kind of excited to see him play inside.
Love seeing that.
So
BYU recruiting guru Jeff Hansen's on the Wise Guys, presented by Brady Plus, distributed by the Deseret News. Spring practice starts Thursday. So for a team that finished 11-2, ranked 13th in the final AP Top 25, Jeff, if you're Kalani Sitake, what would be on your spring football to-do list?
You know, I think the biggest thing that separated BYU last year from the team that they were in 2023 was how bad they wanted it, right? I mean, there's so many. You could go through individual position battles. You could still talk about maybe portal additions and things like that. But I think what made that 24 team so special is that they were determined to prove everybody wrong. How do you stay motivated when you were 11-2, 13th in the country? And I think the recipe's right there. Look, you didn't make it to the Big 12 championship game. Tiebreakers didn't go in your favor. You shouldn't have ever been in the situation that you needed a tiebreaker rule. You had the opportunity there, and it didn't happen. You didn't make the playoff. You were one of the first four out, right? If you're one of the first four out of the NCAA tournament in basketball, that's going to motivate you all offseason long.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing that Kalani and this coaching staff, they have to continue to re-emphasize, is that they got to figure out a way to keep this team hungry, every position group. And that's going to be the biggest difference, because really that hunger, that motivation, that intrinsic something that gets somebody going, that's what's going to allow the quarterbacks to get better, right? if McKay Hillstead is determined to play a bigger role on the roster this year, he's going to push Jake Retzlaff to be even better. And that's what has to happen. There's openings at the wide receiver spot. There's going to be reps that need to be handed out. Who of those younger guys is hungry and determined to say, I am the difference? I can be the guy that I didn't get a lot of time last year, but now I'm going to get on the field. Maybe it's Cody Hagan, and I am going to be the difference between 12-1 and 11-2. That's going to bring everybody up, right? High tide raises everybody, but it starts with that hunger. And I think that's the biggest thing for me that the coaching staff has to do, because it's February. I mean, the offseason is long.
Yeah.
You got to do something in spring ball to light a fire under these guys so that they're self-motivated throughout the summer. That's the biggest thing for me.
We talked a lot about Keanu Tanuvasa as a newcomer that could have an impact. Are there some other newcomers, or maybe it's a young player that we didn't really talk about much last year that's going to have an impact? A couple of those that you're thinking about need to step up in spring and could have an impact in the fall?
Yeah, I look at the cornerback room, and this is the first year that I think finally that Weber State pipeline, it's dry. And so there's some young cornerbacks that are going to have to step up, whether it's Trey Alexander, Jonathan Cabella. Getting Maury Bamba back is huge, but replacing Jacob Robinson, Mark Collins, there's going to be opportunities for some of these younger guys. I think there are guys in that room who can play very well. I love Trey Alexander's length on the outside. I love Jonathan Cabella's quickness. I think he could be a phenomenal nickelback. Jaden Dunlap, he's been in the program for a couple of years, hasn't made a huge impact. Can he find some playing time? That cornerback room, there's going to have to be somebody who steps up, because BYU didn't go to the portal and get that immediate starting guy like Eddie Heckard or Cam Garrett like they've had these last couple of years. Beyond that, I look at a guy like Cody Hagan, who I mentioned, all the talent in the world, that if you just are talking pure raw talent, not experience, not matching it up with anything else, he's got a case that he's the most talented wide receiver in the room. He's exceptionally fast. He's got elite hands. His route running is special. Cody Hagan can be a difference maker. He was just fresh off his mission last year. If he can be healthy and find his role on this team, that's a huge boost to an already pretty good wide receiver room. So I think there's some guys. And then I really do look at McKay Hillstead. He's such an important role. He has such an important role, and really Trayson Bourget as well. But I look at McKay Hillstead as he's got to be, at minimum, Gary Bohannon, right? Gary Bohannon pushed Jake all season long, was a leader in the locker room all season long. And even though he didn't get the playing time that maybe he thought he would get, he made the team better. McKay Hillstead has to do that. He's got to find a way to make it so that Jake Retzlaff can't be comfortable, that the offense isn't comfortable. The quarterback's got to find a way to push everybody else ahead of him.
Tracy on the live stream from Raleigh, North Carolina. Mel from Anchorage, Alaska. Mel says, Blaine, your son Landon was one of my assistants in India.
Oh, wow.
Great young man. Good to have you on the live stream tonight,
right.
Mel.
Yeah, President Nichols. I love it. Yeah. and our son Kellen served in Alaska and knew President Nichols there too.
There's a small world.
Yeah, it's crazy. So we had one serve in Alaska, and the Nichols were a big part of what they're doing, and then one go to India, and they're still there.
And now they're on our show.
That's an international family right there.
Jeff, what area do you want Jake Retzlaff to work on in the next month? A couple of those mistakes cost games, but he went 11-2. He won more P5 games in a single season than anyone in BYU history. So here he comes back. So what's the next month for Jake?
Yeah, to me, it's decision making and accuracy, and I think those two things go hand in hand, because I think while there were some inaccuracy issues that cropped up throughout the season, by and large, his interceptions came as a result of poor decisions. He's a gunslinger, and I think you're going to have to live with that a little bit as a BYU football fan. Jake is going to throw more interceptions, even if he's exceptionally accurate. He's going to throw more interceptions than Jaron Hall did. That's just the nature of the way he plays the game. You're going to have to live with that. But tone it back a little bit, make some of those decisions maybe a little bit faster. Maybe it's not that it's a bad decision, just make it a little bit quicker so that he can use that arm strength. I do think the accuracy issues, at the end of the day, I think it was 58% completion percentage. So he's got some room to grow there. I'm not under any disillusion that, he's going to complete 75% of his passes. But if he can go from 57, 58 to, mid 60s, 63, 64, that's a huge jump. Yeah. And for a guy like Jake, who played so well That's the difference between having a really good season where you helped mitigate a tough schedule and you helped BYU get to 11-2, to where you're a guy winning that extra game and you're the reason BYU got to 12. I think that Jake Retzlaff is that close to being that guy.
Yeah. I love that conversation, Jeff, about getting to 64, 65%. Part of that, I believe, and I know the coaches are thinking about this, is calling more plays for him that allow him to have easy throws. Because BYU's been a real vertical and intermediate passing game the last couple of years, especially last year. And Jake's programmed to push the ball up the field. So part of it is play calling. They do call some plays where he could check down, and it hasn't been coached into him to check it down. Like Steve Young started with check downs and then worked his way up the field. That's what made him so great. One of the highest completion percentage in the history of college football and then in the history of the National Football League. I think we're going to see an emphasis on that in the quarterback room. And I think they'll call more of those. And I think that Jake will check down quicker. And I think that's going to make BYU's offense more effective in this league. So just a little thought on that, because I've been hearing that. So, and by the way, let's remind everybody, this is Cougar Insider Jeff Hansen on the Wise Guys with us, live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wiseguys.com. Let's talk about tight end a little bit, Jeff. You've got Reiner Swanson, who's going to have a great future here, but he's off on a mission to Africa. So what does that tight end room look like, and what do we have to look forward to? Can they get some production out of the tight end next year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the tight end position has been one of the more hotly debated positions of BYU over the last couple of years, because there just hasn't been a ton of tight end production really since Isaac Rex pre-injury. That gnarly ankle injury was kind of the last that we've seen of really high-level tight end play. And I think that the debate has been about, well, does Aaron Roderick even care? Does he even use the tight end position? Does that even matter? I mean, the answer is yes, he absolutely cares, but there just hasn't been that guy demanding targets at the tight end spot. And so you just haven't seen it used. With Carson Ryan coming over from Utah, I see a guy who can command those targets. I love what he was first at Timpview High School and then American Fork High School. Coming out, he was fantastic. He ends up at UCLA and kind of plays an H-back role. So he showcases his athleticism and his ability to do a lot of things at UCLA. When he transfers to Utah, they're a really tight end heavy team. He was one of 5 guys who got pretty significant reps for Utah, more of an inline role, showcased his ability to block. He went out and made some catches as well. But you've seen now at a high level in the Pac-12 and then in the Big 12 at Utah last year, you've seen all of the pieces that make up a really good tight end. You've seen the athleticism, the blocking, you've seen the ability to get downfield, to be a receiver. He just hasn't had consistent opportunities. And I think at BYU, going into that tight end room next year, it's pretty wide open. He's being brought in to be tight end 1. You're finally going to get to see, and really for Carson Ryan, he's finally going to get to be the everything tight end. And I've seen him for a long time, right? I mean, I covered him back when he was at Timpview. He's showcased the tools, the athleticism at every stop he has made. I mean, he's made an immediate impact everywhere he's gone, whether it was in high school, transferring to American Fork, whether it was a freshman at UCLA, a transfer at Utah, immediate impact. Now the opportunity is going to be there for him at BYU to be the guy, and we're going to see a lot more tight end play. There's no question.
Well, the guy, when it comes to running, Ed Eyestone's going to join us here in just a couple of minutes. He's in studio with us tonight as he settles in. Let's talk about 4 guys, special teams. The Fab 4 is back. You got the kicker, the punter, the kick returner, and the punt returner. So how advantage is it to have those guys in place in key positions, locked, loaded, and ready to fire?
Oh, it's huge because you don't have to – Kelly Poppinga doesn't have to have position battles. He doesn't have to figure it out. And his whole special teams unit was so strong last year. You can build off of that, but now you can get creative. Now you can find ways to be a more unique weapon in special teams. And we already know this coaching staff, they love fakes. They love to do trick plays. They love that kind of stuff. And I think that having all of those guys back and really the entire, with the exception of the long snapper, the whole unit is back. The special teams unit is back. I think we're going to see a lot of creativity, and spring ball is going to be an opportunity for the artists to have a blank canvas and make something great for BYU.
So the Cougs finished 13 in the final poll. Is that foreshadowing of where they end up in the preseason poll? Like, where do you expect when that first preseason or when the first poll comes out before the season, that we'll see BYU?
It should be foreshadowing. I think 13, 14 is probably where they should be. I don't expect them to come in that high. I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist when it comes to these pollsters and things like that. You've got to boost the big name brands in the preseason. I think that's going to happen. So I'm expecting BYU to come in closer to 20, but I think BYU absolutely should be in that 12, 13, 14 range.
If they're 20, Kalani does a nice job getting his guys ready after being mistreated by Common Thought. And I would think 20 would get them fired up.
I would hope so, yeah. I'm with you.
Now, look, last time we were together, we did score predictions for the Alamo
Yes, we
Bowl.
did.
And yours was 38-35. Now, the final score was 36-14. I'm not going to...
You got the BYU part right on offense.
We're not going to get after you for that pick. We'll come at you with this. When they meet again on September 27th, what do you anticipate in the rematch?
I love that BYU gets Colorado early because that's going to be a team that's still got a lot of figuring out to do. I mean, so much of who they were was wrapped up in the Sanders brothers and Travis Hunter, and they're all gone. So I think BYU getting them early, I think last year is foreshadowing of that score. I expect that one to be another 2 or 3 score win for BYU.
Really?
I think so. Ton of talent on that team, but I think it'll take them some time. I think that's a whole new identity. That's not just replacing a quarterback. They've got to replace a heart and soul. I think that's going to take a little bit of time in Boulder.
Were you surprised that Dion didn't end up as the Dallas Cowboys head coach after this last season, and he's coming back to Colorado?
I was a little bit surprised that he really didn't seem to consider it a whole lot either, and that was surprising to me.
We're ready for 5 questions with Jeff Hansen, presented by StrategySquare.co. They can change your world. They're helping wise guys conquer the globe as well. So see Chantal at StrategySquare.co. Jeff's top 5 impact players for the fall season. We don't have a drum roll, so we'll just imagine one. We're going to go 5 to 1, with 1 being the most impactful. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Lane, lead him through.
Let's start with number 5. What do you got, Jeff?
Yeah, number 5 was maybe the toughest one for me. I thought Jake Retzlaff. I thought Maury Bamba. I thought Waylon Lapuaho as well. I think he's poised for a huge year. I ended up with Chase Roberts at number 5. Him coming back is huge. And I think that Chase, I think he's going to be a big focal point, obviously, of the offense again. I've got Chase Roberts as my 5th.
When you got Chase Roberts as 5, you know this team's talented.
Hey, are we giving up on Darius Lassiter getting another year? I haven't heard a
we're not giving up on it.
About it.
I don't think we're giving up. I'm losing hope, maybe, but I'm not giving up.
Yeah. It's interesting because I know that with ETN, he was hopeful, and compliance or whoever it is that works on it just like very early said, there's no chance. And so he declared for the NFL. But they have not said there's no chance to Darius. Yeah. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. Okay, so Roberts, number 5.
Yep. So who do you got for number 4, Jeff?
Number 4, we talked about him already, Keanu Tanuvasa. I mean, look, he represents so much for BYU. He represents so much on the recruiting trail. I interviewed him first before at a camp in Las Vegas, and he stood out as a sophomore in high school as a leader, as the kind of guy that Kalani Sitake wants. BYU didn't get him. It's taken a long route for him to get here. His role in the locker room is going to be maybe the biggest aspect of his game. He is a natural leader, and the team already knows him, responds to him. Keanu Tanuvasa is a huge addition.
That's big. D lineman in the top 5. I love it.
That?
Okay, how about number 3?
LJ Martin. We kind of forgot about LJ a little bit, but when you look at his stats, man, he was really good when he was on the field. He battled some injury, rehab last year. It took him a little bit of time. I think he's healthy now. And I think he's going to have a huge offseason, and a healthy LJ made that offense entirely different.
Yeah.
That's a good pick.
No, and the key for him is, you know what he is. Please keep him healthy in spring ball. Because remember, he separated his shoulder or dislocated his shoulder in
surgery
spring ball, and that really slowed him down over the summer, and I think it caused they played him tentatively at first, and he had to play himself back in. Keep that guy healthy through spring ball, and I think he can do great things. So LJ Martin at number 3. So we got a wide receiver, a defensive lineman, and a running back. Number 2.
I got Jack Kelly at number 2. He did everything for BYU. I think he's the best NFL prospect on BYU's roster next year. Jack Kelly coming back, huge win. He's going to have an even bigger season than he did. He just does so much in so many different ways, multiple levels of the defense. I love what Jack Kelly brings to the table.
That's a great one.
How about the Nixon and Keel and those linebackers have been on the show recently would applaud your selection of putting a linebacker.
Well, they say that they're Nixon and Keel, who are two of the best combos that, we talk about greatest linebacker teams. And of course, we always go back to 84, 85 with Kurt Govea and Leon White and Kerry Whittingham and Marv Allen. And then we always talk about Keel and Nixon and Jensen and that group. And they go, oh man, this group might be the best we've ever had. Those guys say it because this is a great group and Jack Kelly kind of leads that group. So pretty fun. Glasker's also very special. It's a great group. Okay, so we got a wide receiver, a defensive lineman, a running back, and a linebacker. Who's your number one?
Well, you guys didn't know my list. I feel like we have to make that clear before I say number one. But I got Zay Glasker at the top of the list. I think this is one of the best linebacker duos. And then you throw in a Siale Acer and a Harrison Taggart. This unit is fantastic. I think Isaiah Glasker, what we saw from him in the bowl game, what we saw from him, and especially in the back half of the season, his ability to really do it all. It reminds me of Kyle Van Noy. You have to almost treat that name with reverence when you start comparing people to Kyle Van Noy.
Right.
But his ability to make an impact in coverage and hang with tight ends, hang with quicker wide receivers, his ability to plug gaps in the run game, and he fits gaps so well. He's just his instincts are special. And then he gets after the passer as well. He can do it all. I think Isaiah Glasker, I think last year was just the start. I think he is poised for a big year, and I think he finishes next year as BYU's best NFL prospect. I think Jack Kelly is that guy going into the year.
Okay.
But Isaiah Glasker, with his measurables and what the production that I think he'll have, I think he ends the year as BYU's best NFL prospect.
So you got a D lineman and two backers in your top five. We've already mentioned the fact the secondary that's coming back is phenomenal, right? We have no lack of talent at corners, just new guys there, but the safeties are deep. We got Tanuvasa there. This was the number one defense in the Big 12 last year. Do they repeat as the number one defense in the Big 12 again next year?
I think so. I mean, they're going to be right there in contention. There's some other defenses that I think will be really good again. I think Utah's going to be really good again. I think Iowa State returns a lot as well. So there's some really good defenses in the Big 12, but BYU is going to be right there. They are a defense that teams are going to fear playing. And whether they finished 1, 2, or 3 or whatever they finish, there's not an offense in the conference that wants to play against BYU's defense.
Jeff, this might be the first top 5 impact player list in the history of BYU that didn't have a quarterback on it.
Yeah, how about that?
Where's your quarterback on this group?
I know. It's pretty wild to think about it. But it really goes to show how good that defense is.
Yeah.
I'm an offensive guy by nature, and I have to put 3 defensive guys in the top 5. It hurt me a little bit.
That tells you everything right there.
I can feel the wrestle there.
Clearly, he would have Jake. Yeah. He would clearly have Jake at number 6, though.
Yeah, it'd be just outside the 5,
clearly at
right?
6, yes.
Obvious.
Yeah, because Blaine likes to defend the quarterbacks on this show.
When people disrespect the quarterbacks, I just get all upset. So clearly, he would be number 6. So.
A close 6. Hey, we'll see you over at practice. We sure appreciate your time. We love it when you come on the show. You can follow Jeff at Rakoto10 on X, 247sports.com, CougarSportsInsider.com. Anywhere else we're missing besides just knocking on your front door?
I think we got the big ones. Yeah, come on over to the house.
You want us to give people your address and phone
Thursday
number?
night at Jeff's?
Avoid that. Yes.
Yeah, just come on over.
Okay.
Hey, thanks, brother. We'll see you soon.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
That's Jeff Hansen. We love when he comes on the show. You know what? He just knows his stuff.
Yes, he does.
And he's not afraid to share it. And there was his top 5 impact players for the fall season, and they're all fantastic. The fact that they're not the quarterback gives you an idea of how good BYU can be. Thank you for watching The Wise Guys.
If you like what you're watching, you can help us out by subscribing and hitting that notification button.